Good morning, everyone. This is Tim. Scott, can you hear me okay?
I can.
All right.
So as you all can tell, I changed my profile picture because I've got egg on my face for all of this mess up.
This is the first group. They might not know about it yet.
Yeah, that's true. All right, the build just finished.
All right. Yep.
It was really weird yesterday that the new screen centering was lining the windows to the top of your screen.
Right. Yeah.
And that, I mean, it's actually an API call that does the actual centering. So I'm not sure if there's some part of your window you're monitored.
Well, I mean, it just started doing it with that last version where you made the changes. So
we'll I might have to, I'll have to go back and see.
Or are you going to present? I see that you took the host.
So did I? I can.
Okay.
Well, there's not really anything to present.
Right. Yeah, the splash screen opening, it snaps to the top centered as well, even with this last update. And I noticed when I opened ESP this morning, it opened on my default monitor rather than the monitor it was on when I closed it yesterday.
Yeah, that might. Where did it open today?
Same place.
It opened on
the splash screen's on one screen, but the app is opening on the default screen.
Okay, it should follow. It should request the same monitor that the splash screen opened on. Let me see if mine does the same thing. And you've got your primary monitor is your big widescreen, or is it the?
No, it's the tall one.
The tall one. That could be. I wonder if it's just got the geometry. See, now mine opened up on the main, on not the primary monitor. It opened up exactly where the splash screen is. And because I deleted my new year, there was no scenario active, and it opened Scenario Explorer directly on top of the main window on my second monitor. So,
right,
which is what we want.
Yep.
Okay. Right. Well, good morning, everybody. Does Zoom have the ability to raise your hands so I can, if I ask a question? Let me see. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Thank you, Gerald.
Claps. Is there other symbols you can use?
I wonder how she did that.
Yeah, sorry, I thought that was raised hand. It is waving or clapping. I don't know.
Oh, there's Stacy's got a thumbs up. Okay.
How did you guys do that?
There's actually tons of emojis you can throw out.
On the bottom of your screen, it says reactions.
Oh, I see.
Oh, reactions. Okay.
Oh, yes, there it is.
Party.
Oh,
I don't see specifically.
okay. And
what-
then raise hand. Raise hand is just like if in lower hand. Okay, right. All right. So, so yesterday morning. So anyway, you can see my profile picture. I've got egg on my face over this create New Year scenario. And when I started Monday, remember I went through that big paragraph on the top of the release notes about how we can now select which budget columns load where. And that was all fine, and that all works well as long as you select the right columns. But the problem is in the create new year, it only asks you to select a default database. The problem is behind the scenes when that process ran, it did not necessarily select the right working and adopted databases to load into your new year. And I think, Carol, you actually suspected that there was something wrong, but we didn't investigate it further. But further investigation, we found that you may or may not have got your actual 21-22 working and adopted budget loaded into the blue columns on the on your new year 22-23 scenario. Then the other problem that we noted, and I'm not, Tim, did we note the employee dates in the afternoon or in the morning yesterday?
I believe it was afternoon.
Yeah, in the afternoon. Rhonda, was it you that found that the employee position start and end dates when we were playing with annualization?
I think it was Sean.
Was
I think it was Sean.
No,
Yeah.
it wasn't me. I was the,
Okay.
at the columns.
Yeah, it could have been Sean from GAPS. We found that the position start and end dates were double incremented. So the position start and end dates had 23, 24 fiscal year start and end dates.
I think Carol and Beth had that issue yesterday.
So say that again, Beth.
Carol and Beth had that yesterday.
Okay. All right. So we found out, I found out the culprit of that, and I have resolved it all. I'm testing it. I'm loading and reloading, and then also Tammy Booth from Park Rose found that a lot of her vacancies got doubled up from the year-to-date or the daily employee load with the same position number, same account code, same record, same everything, except there were some lookup values that didn't align. And so all three of these items are significant and just purely an oversight that we didn't check those little details when we did this testing. So the question is, I'm going to be doing an update to the databases that will remedy these problems today. And how many of you, by raising your hand, and for those of you that just joined, there's a reactions button on the toolbar. How many of you created your new fiscal year scenario in your production database? Okay, Rhonda, oh, okay.
I'm betting everybody, Scott, because we didn't ask anybody to change to test,
Okay.
which, you know,
All right.
Yeah.
That's fine. Okay, so the second question is, do you want to, tomorrow, do you want to go through the process of deleting and recreating your new fiscal year with all the right settings, and hopefully it'll be much better this time? Or this evening, I can do that for you. I can delete the fiscal year, the new fiscal year scenario that you created, and recreate it for you if you'd like, or if you would like to go through the process again. I can, either way, it doesn't matter to me. Just, does everybody want to do it themselves, or do they want me to do it for you? I guess that there's no hand for that. Everybody who wants to delete and recreate their new year themselves, raise their hand. Everybody who wants me to do it for them, raise their hand. Okay, the ayes have it. Okay, I will do that. And so either by the end of the day today, possibly, depending on how quickly things happen and how much time I spend with you guys here, and Tim, depends on how quickly I can get that done. But definitely it's something I can do, and I will do that for you, and I'll be able to capture which scenario you created it from, delete it and recreate it. And I will not enable the annualize option. If you want to annualize, I'll have you do that separately. And I will send an email out to everybody when it's done.
And just a caveat to that, if you've done any work in your model, you're going to lose it. I doubt any of you have yet, but if we do anything today, because I wanted to look at the assumption calculations today, you'll have to make a note of it and redo that on the new year after it's deleted and recreated.
Thank you, Scott.
Yes.
Yes,
So-
hey, Scott, will you make sure that those of us who want budgeted positions coming in, that you'll do that as well?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, it's a very good question, Rhonda. And I will make sure that for you, I enable that option when I do this. What Rhonda is referring to is if you have, and can we call them like recurring budgeted positions, Rhonda? That would probably be.
Yeah, that's exactly what they are.
Yeah, they're
Mhm.
budgeted positions that she's got in her model. They don't ever really show up in visions anywhere, but they're placeholders. And they're placeholders for now. What do you use them for? Substitutes, temporaries?
I use them for subs, personal payout, temporaries. Yep.
Okay.
And some coaches too.
Okay, so those are things that most districts opt to budget at a lump sum, or they have positions coming in from vision. But there are other positions, other types of positions where they're budgeted and they're just kind of like placeholders, and they allow you to manage all of your employee staffing on the employees and essentially eliminate any overrides on the financial grid for employees. So those are what we'll call recurring budgeted positions. And does anybody else have any budgeted positions in their adopted or working budget that they created their new year from that need to be preserved, other than Rhonda? Does anybody know? Oh, Jeannie, you do? Okay.
Kim from Lincoln County mentioned yesterday that she did.
Okay.
And I also would like to annualize my people. So how do I do that? We'll do that afterwards.
Yeah, who was that? Was that
Jeannie.
Jeannie? Oh, Jeannie, okay.
I have a pile. We had a lot of turnover. So we have people that are at, instead of 181 days, they're at 140.
Yeah, Jeannie, I'll just have, when I get done,
Well, I can show her how to do it.
Yeah.
I'll show everybody how to do it when when I take over.
Okay.
right.
As long as I can figure out how to do that.
Yeah, it's real
Right.
easy, Jenny. It's just a checkbox that you check on recalc.
Right.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Tim, why don't you go ahead and show your screen? There's another thing I want to just test. And I want everybody to see if it works also. How many, by a show of hands, actually have ESP open on their desktop? Okay. I mean, you don't have to. Okay, yeah. All right. So as soon as Tim shares his desktop.
I believe I'm sharing.
Oh, there you are. Okay. All right. So Tim, go to help support. Click send support email. And everybody who's got ESP open, I want you to do this and just set the subject to hello and then put a message in there and then click send. I just want to see if, and I got to open my email to see if they come in.
What email address is that sent to?
Support. And so if everybody has that, oh, gee, I got it from Jeannie, so that's cool. Anybody else try that? So that's kind of a new feature that you can actually send us. Tim, bring that up again. Let's see. Okay, click cancel. Do the help screenshot.
I saw the little screenshot thing pop up for a second.
Oh, it did? Okay,
Yeah.
take screenshot.
But I don't think it actually attached it or took a screenshot.
Okay, now go to the email. Support, send support email. Click on the
I got an email message is missing.
keep typing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And click the attach file. Oops.
Does it save it as a file or is it just on the desktop? I mean, on the
It's
clipboard.
it's in documents. There's an ESP folder now, screenshots.
Okay, ESP screenshot. Ta-da! Double click that. All right. And so I got Mary, I got Beth, APP West Lynn. Who's that? So anyway, Geraldine, okay. And Jeannie sent a screenshot. Yeah.
And the one I sent never came through, it looks like. But
Yeah, Tim, can grab one of those emails that open, like open Jeannie's email. So so this is what we get. We actually get, it tells us what scenario you're running, what your database connection is, and just a lot of information about what's happening. And then there's Jeannie's screenshot.
Oh, okay. It does attach the screenshot. Cool.
It's there as a file, but it's also, I put it in the body. So
Can you
So is
tell me
this what
where
you're-
you pointed to have people do the email thing?
oh, so hold on just a second. So Tim, even without attaching the file, open up like Mary's, because Mary didn't deliberately attach a file. But scroll down to the bottom. It did capture her screen. Cool. All right. So that's another way. If you want to send us something, now it doesn't give you the ability to mark it up like you can with Snagit or the new snip tool, but it's right there and it comes right into the support inbox. So,
But
Right where? Sorry, I had to restart my system and rejoined. It's
Carol.
Carol, yeah.
Show her up under the help.
Support, send support
email. If you click on there, you can send us an email.
But you guys remember that it's only a screenshot of whatever screen you have on. So make sure it's showing what your email is describing. And like Scott said, you won't be able to, mark it up to highlight areas of the screenshot as well. So
Hey, this is Sean. When I'm trying to send it, it says invalid sender email too.
And that's from.
Does yours say ESP application up here? Support at expaccess.net?
Yep.
Okay, Rhonda, have you got ESP open?
Yes, I do. And I sent an email, 2 emails. Did you get them?
No, and you did not get an error?
I did not get an error. And you have to type so many characters.
Yeah, you have to type in at least 10 characters, but Sean's saying he's got a,
Right. And I click send and it will eventually disappear, but it apparently this is the second one I've sent you. So
we might have to look at, I might have to contact the ESD IT and find out if they're blocking the connection, the outbound connection.
So you didn't get the ones from me either, Scott?
I didn't.
No.
So that,
Okay,
I'll talk to Brian Berkeley about that.
okay.
See if we can get that opened up. It should be open because it's going to a public Office 365 email box. But like I said, the IT departments are running scared right now. Just there's so much going on. They could have blocked that, but I will check on that. Everybody, let's see, everybody who's on our cloud works, and West Lynn Wilsonville works. So the Clackamas ESD is working. So it's probably just something with the LBL ESD network services that we have to open up. So, okay. So everybody that's here, hold on, I have to write this down. Otherwise I will get, say budgeted positions. Rhonda. Now, Rhonda, you want those for
Canyon.
And, but LBL, we don't need to do it.
Let me find out and I'll get back to you, Scott, on that
Okay.
one.
And Carol at Lincoln County. Carol, what we were asking is, I'm going to recreate your new year, and we were asking about the option of preserving the budgeted positions that you've created in your adopted budget that we created from. And that was something that Rhonda had thought, you said yesterday you needed to preserve those.
Kim actually said that yesterday.
Oh, Kim did? Okay.
He did.
All right. All right. All right. And was there somebody else that raised their hand on that? Yes, no. Okay. All right. Somebody's drawing me a heart on the screen.
Oh, that's me. I was just
Oh,
seeing how this works. I can annotate.
yeah, I figured that out. It's not as, there's actually a pointer, but it's not as simple and easy as TeamViewer to where you can point and have multiple users pointing at the same time.
Right.
Okay. So Tim, why don't you show them the real quick? I want to see the pop-up on recalc employees on that. Oh, you're on that, not on the employees. And then Tim's going to go through assumptions, talk more about assumptions. Again, I'll be listening, but I'll be continuing to make sure that we get the new fiscal years created properly this time in the background. Oh, and I also did, I told you I figured out why some of the dates were double adding or double incrementing, and we will remedy that also.
Okay, so Jeannie, this is to your question. If you're, and Scott says he's not going to annualize, when you are ready to annualize, when you're on the employees tab, when you select recalc employees, and you would want to recalc your employees. Let's say you go in here, you make some changes to the employees, change salary plans, move people around, and then you need to recalc the employees. This is why you would recalculate the employees. And it gives you the option to annualize employees.
Now,
Thank you.
Tim, let me interrupt. As I was testing last night, I noticed on the actual process that annualizes the employees, there is a reset option that I built in that's not exposed. And because we talked about yesterday, once you annualize, how do you undo it? And the answer at that point was to copy Infinite Visions back over, or there is a way to reconcile just the work days also. But I might be able to, I need to test and see if the reset annualization works. Essentially, it's going to just copy the Infinite Visions position start and end dates back over the top of the model position start and end dates. I might be able to expose that because I do set a flag in the scenario if we've annualized employees. And so if that's set, I can enable the reset option, I think. We'll see. Let's do this, Tim. Open up the reconcile form. So if you decided you wanted to reconcile the employee dates back, not many people have ever played with this form. Might be a good time to just talk about it. So if you want to take everything that's on the Infinite Visions and selectively copy it over to the model.
Just a second, Scott. Just for everyone's, how can I draw? Anyway, this is the button I just clicked right here to open this form. Actually, it's the scope form, but it's the reconcile tab.
Yeah, switch over to the selection. You can see it's
Yeah.
just a regular scope form.
You can open your scope or click this button right here. It'll open directly to the reconcile tab.
Right. And so let's say I wanted to just copy all of my position start and end dates. If you scroll down, position start to go back up. Pay type longevity. Those are duplicated. I have to find out where those are duplicated. Go back up. There's position starts not in there.
Let's see it. Looks like there's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. I would have thought position start rate would have been in there. Go down again. I don't see it. All right. I will figure that one out also. Like I said, this is a really, really seldom used form. The work calendar, work days, work hours, the position start and position end dates should be there. But you could actually select the checkbox for position start and position end, and then run this, and it will tell you all the differences. It'll load the employees that have different work position start and position end dates.
Oh, it's not just the start and end dates that are in there?
Yeah, it doesn't
Those are
have the word
different.
position in front of it. It just says
There's
start
a-
date, end date.
Yeah, there's an end date and a start date.
Yes.
Oh. End date.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So, oh, there we go. So if you click on that and then click on start date, it should say position, but so that's why they're duplicated. I'm not putting the group in there and the start date. Now click OK. And so now it's going to tell you that you're reconciling Infinite Vision start and end dates. Now, if Tim reconciled although here you can see that we should see some differences, it didn't find any differences. Change your scope. Not sure why you got none in for the function.
What about at the very top, the positions new or missing? What would that do?
That will, if you want to find out where there are positions in the model that differ from positions in the in Infinite Visions. That's how, if you reload your employees periodically, reload the blue columns, you can use that all positions new or missing, and it will show you what's different between the model and the infinite visions. Yeah, so you just reset that. I'll have to
Is
check
it
on
because
the-
I annualized already and they would all be matching right now, right?
well, it's I'd have to check. I need to look at the logic on that. But
But in infinite visions, they still should be
they still
partial.
should, yeah.
Right.
So it should be showing us everything that it actually annualized.
Can you key off of work days? Because the work days would be different.
Right. You can try the work days. But what you get is you get a new checkbox if it actually finds anything. Try the work days, Tim. And then you can either select en masse, or you can
Is there a clear all?
I don't think so.
So if I have boxes checked, but it's grayed out where it says, okay, did I do something wrong?
So do you have all plus another box checked?
No, I have end date and start date.
Yeah. Hold on, let me see. If you clear all the boxes and just check one box, does it enable?
I think you have to choose a reconcile set, because if it's set to none, it's grayed out, but if you choose infinite visions or something else, it opens it up.
All right. Okay. So if here on Tim's actually showing the work days, and it is working, and you now see the reconcile column, and you can, if you drag that over, Tim, drag the work days over. So now you can see wherever the work days are different between visions and the model, you know, we have a record. And if you look, the annualized flag is on for all of these employees, which logically makes sense for what we did. So if you wanted to just copy the work days over, if you clicked on the top reconcile checkbox, so now if we save, it's actually going to create an adjustment and change that, change the work days back. Go ahead.
And this is just telling you, you are, I mean, we talked about it yesterday, you are overwriting your model. Now, Scott, is this actually changing the position start and end date, or is it just changing the work days?
That's what we're going to find out.
Right.
The forms are centering properly now. These
No, that one popped. Well, it popped up on my other screen.
Oh, it did. Okay.
Yeah, I had to drag it over. Same for the process log. It's like half on, half off.
And the nice thing about doing it this way is it actually creates adjustments that show up in the audit. So it's like you went in and manually changed everybody's work days. Now it should clear the annualization flag also.
Do you have to have the columns showing? Maybe that's why when we did the position start and end date, it didn't find any differences.
If it should have shown them,
Right.
but that could be true. There's our audit. All right.
So this is what we expect to see because we're still in that reconcile mode. And it said, show me the differences in work days. But now that it's copied them over, there are no differences anymore. So this is actually what you expect to see. No records found. And then to like we see other places, to get out of this mode, you click reset here. Because now there are no more differences in the work days between the model and the Infinite Visions blue columns or Business Plus columns. But it is a little weird to see that pop up after it's done. But that means it did it right. There's no more differences. So now, just to confirm, although
Yep. Look at the top one shows the reconcile, but now turn on the position start and end dates.
for visions or both?
No,
Model.
just the model at first.
Okay.
And hold the control key down.
Yep.
I made a change to that logic also. If the shift key is down, it won't go out and rebuild the columns like it was doing, because it was a lag in the second click as it rebuilt the menus. Logically, if you're holding the shift key down, you don't need to go and rebuild the menu structure. We're always looking for ways to improve the performance and responsiveness, sometimes to my detriment. Okay, so 7/1, 6:30. It does not look like. Turn on the Infinite Visions end date, because that's what it would have adjusted. The end date. It wouldn't have adjusted the Infinite Visions.
So everyone that got copied over has this, we call it the reconcile flag. We used to call it the reconcile flag. It's kind of called the copy flag now. It was copied. It has a little green and orange
And
arrow.
it's similar to the reconcile button on the scope toolbar.
Right, similar to this one.
All right, so those that change go all the way to the top again, Tim. Okay, so the end date was 11/14. Yeah, it did not recalculate the end date. And that's, I do have a process to calculate an end date based on work days. But the problem is there's weekends and holidays, and it's based on the work calendar. So just changing the work days would not necessarily change the end date. It's just I don't have the smarts in there to download the work calendars and know what days are holidays. So to be able to add work days to the start date and wind up with an end date. So, but we will check. Now, I see your work days are 2023. Is this
right? I was saying it worked for me yesterday. I didn't have a problem.
Go to the salary plans. And right click here, turn on these contract start and end date. So I'm going to have two columns. And it's under stepping or COLA, contract and a contract start. Yeah. So this is a value that actually originates with a scenario setting, but it can be adjusted per salary schedule. Yeah, so it's set up to the full fiscal year. And that actually originates from this assumptions tab. The scenario assumptions has an employee start and employee end date that you can adjust. And it might make sense to adjust it to be your school start, and then for the administrators, change it back to 7/1. So it's the full fiscal year. So, but the issue with the new year on some of you that get the 2024 is it was incrementing this date, the position contract date or the salary plan contract date. Okay, so I'm going to let Tim take it over, and I'm going to continue to work on these new year problems, and we'll get it all fixed up, and hopefully by tomorrow you'll have new year scenarios.
Any questions about that reconcile or the copy and how to do that with this form? So this was just a way of copying from visions or the blue into the green, but we just did one column, just the work days, rather than copying.
And I'll find out what happened on if it was that the positions weren't visible.
So Scott, this would be a good thing if they've made other changes like moves or salary plan changes, and they want to copy in just the work days, it wouldn't affect those other changes, right?
That's correct. That's the benefit of this.
Right. So if you have made changes to your model, you're only going to be changing what you're copying based on this selection. That will preserve any of your other changes that you've made to the model. Because if you do tools, copy all employees, that's going to overwrite everything in the model. Okay, let's, Stacy asked about, yes, these are being recorded, and I hope to have them up on our YouTube channel maybe by the weekend. And I will send out an email to everyone with a link to that. And so you guys can go back and watch if you need to rehear something or rewatch something. It's both audio and video. So you can share with your friends, have a watch party, whatever you want to do.
Okay. All right. So I'll be here working if you have any questions.
So the assumptions tab, this is where a lot of, well, basically all of your calculations, the ESP, are controlled. But keep in mind that because we're going to have to rebuild your new year, if you make any changes right now, write them down. Because once we get the new year built, excuse me, you'll have to go back in and reapply those changes. So I'm just going to go through the whole assumptions tab from the top to the bottom and just give everything a quick explanation. Whatever you select on the left will show up what's on the right. The properties will be on the right. We talked about the baseline a little bit yesterday, and when you save a baseline, this is where you'll have the label and the date. When you save the baseline, you could go in here and change the label and the description if you need to for your baseline. This is if the general fund target, you can, if you know you have a target, a dollar amount and or an FTE amount, that's what controls. If you look up here in the column heading for the main column, we had this on, I think all the tabs. You have it keeps track of what your general fund is and what your current FTE is, and you can put in a dollar amount here, what you're trying to target, and the colors will change. If you're, this will turn green if you're under, red if you're over. Same for the FTE. It's just a little simple visual way to kind of track if you're kind of on target with the values you put in here. These are just information values, money that's dollars that are rolling up from the employees, FTE. A lot of this stuff you won't worry about. We can calculate your ending fund balance if you need to. You put in an account mask and it will push and pull out of that so that every time you recalculate, it will keep your fund balanced based on the, what do you call it? The whatever
The
account. you're-
difference, oh, the difference between the revenue and the expenses.
Right, but what are we calling the account where they hold, where it's push and
Mm.
pulled out of?
It'd be your, well, there's a lot of ambiguity on ending fund balance, whether it's loaded as beginning fund balance for next year, or some people consider it a asset or a fund balance account. Some people consider it an expense. It formally is an expense because in public sector or school type accounting, your budget has to balance each year. And so whatever you don't spend that you have to account for as an expense. And so your ending fund balance is typically an expense that then gets moved into an asset account in your next year as your beginning fund balance, which it's an asset carried forward. So, but different districts treat ending fund balance, beginning fund balance in different ways. So that's why we give them the option of selecting the mask and the account type that they want. I hope that made sense.
Yeah.
And I am not an accountant. I learned a lot along the way.
If you wanted to create projections, you can create projections within the financials tab. And these are some settings that you can create. You can also create projection scenarios. I'll just show that real fast. It really would require its own training if you wanted to do that. Where did my scenario explorer go? You could right click, say, create scenario, forecast scenarios, but I'm not sure I don't want to do that. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, but you can create quite a few. But we'll go over that in 2 weeks training if you need it. Budget start and end dates. These are just the defaults if they're not set up on the position, and most of the time they are. This controls the rounding. This is kind of a big headache for a lot of people because you can have a dollar rounding, which can throw things off. We had one district that they rounded only to the $100, but most people just just leave it at the default rounding. This is the annualized source. I'm not going to go over those because hopefully everybody understands what annualized source means. FTE calculation source. If you're not sure what those are, you can come to the training in a couple of weeks. We'll talk about how those are calculated. And then if you have grants, setting up your grant information. And then this is just some backend ERP database where we actually go and reload your values. So you really won't spend too much time on this main tab here. So we talk about let's start with the assumptions over here on the left. And this first group are the mandatory cost. And the way it's set up is you have mandatory cost. The trigger is any of the salary accounts. And when it talks about the salary accounts, if you look down here, you have salary accounts. So anything that's a salary account gets put in this group because all of these objects are salaries, which means they need to have payroll costs calculated on them. So anything that's in this group, calculate PERS pickup, Social Security, workers' comp. And we'll just go through these individually right now so you understand how they work and where you need to change your values. For this one, the first thing to look at is this uses a data schedule. So I click on PERS and these are the properties for the calculation on the right. This is salary accounts. The column is the total wages. So whatever values show up in the total wages for an employee, it's going to apply this calculation. There's no qualifier because it's going to be on every employee. So that's why it's collapsed. If it's collapsed, that means it's empty. There's no qualifier because we want to apply this on anybody's total wages, any funding's total wages. It uses a data schedule. Some use a data schedule, some you put the actual values in these columns and in these properties, and we'll look at that in a second. But this uses a data schedule, and all of the data schedules in ESP are at the bottom of this list under schedules. So if you'll notice for PERS, it said use the data schedule is called PERS. So that means it's using this schedule down here. And this is what we call a lookup value. Anybody that has one of these statuses, this is the rate that gets applied for that calculation. So on the new year build, these values get copied into the model, but these are the values that you will need to change for your new year. If you have new PERS rates, you go in here and change these. And you will leave these alone because you also have your PERS rates being calculated on the blue columns. And that's where these values are come from. And remember, the blue columns, that's for reference only. That's what they're getting this year, right? So this is the rate that they should be getting this year. And this is the rate we expect to be calculated next year. The default factor, this is the factor that is used for any of the salary accounts on the financials tab, the non-FTE salaries, substitutes, whatever salaries you just lump sum budget on the financials. They still need to have these payroll costs calculated on them. And so, but they do not have, since they're not an employee, they do not have these statuses assigned to them. It's just a lump sum dollar. So this is the rate, the default factor is the rate that will be used on those values. You can have ESP calculated if you want, the average factor. It'll take all of the employees and do some math to figure out the average value that's used. Or if you don't check that, you can manually put in a number. We see a lot of districts, they put in the highest value over here. They put it as the default factor so that you're guaranteeing that you'll have enough money. So you can either let ESP do it, calculate an average value, or you can manually put a number in to calculate for the non-FTE salaries. Any questions?
Tim, there are two new options down there, apply to employees and apply to non-roll-up. We just added those. And there's for certain conditions where if a lookup table is being used for lookup schedule, that you really only want it to be used for the non-roll-up pay on the financial grid, and you don't want the default to apply to the employees. So you can uncheck that, apply to employees. So that way, if a value is not found in the lookup table, it'll use a zero value, and it won't calculate it. Conversely, if you wanted to apply to the employees but not to your non-roll-up pay, then you would uncheck the apply to non-roll-up pay.
Well, but if you uncheck that apply to non-roll-up, which value would it use then?
It'll use zero. It won't calculate. In this case, what is this retirement? It won't calculate retirement in the non-roll-up pay.
Okay, so on the financials, if you put in money for substitutes, it would not calculate if that was unchecked.
Exactly. And
right, okay.
And the reason for that is you could have some like some reimbursement for benefits or domestic partnership insurance and things like that you don't want it to apply to on the financial grid. You want only employee costs on the non-roll-up employees, on the non-roll-up financial items.
Right.
And Tim, this is a good
Yeah.
time to see go back down to those two and see the little tooltip balloon next to the property. Pick, this, there you can say, go down. That's the right tooltip.
Yeah.
Yeah, for non-roll-up includes financial grid fixed amounts rolled up from the employee grid. The default average factor will be used when calculating non-roll-up costs. So there's a little tooltip there to explain that. So.
And this is new too, isn't it? To keep IV factors updated.
Yes, and that is as we reload. If we find and you may not want that checked. We have it checked. It will keep the model amounts in sync with what's being loaded from Visions. So if the factors change in Visions, we reload the PERS status every night. Then when it does the recalculation, and if the keep value is updated, it will update the model numbers from the infinite vision numbers. So
it would overwrite your model numbers if you change them?
Yes.
Okay.
And that should default to unchecked.
Right. When you want to make changes to the schedule, if you click, you have to go into edit mode. You see here, you have a little edit pencil, a little edit checkbox. Now you can go in and notice that it's light green and blue, and you can now edit. You could even edit the infinite visions if you wanted to. I believe, let me check. I believe when you go into the schedule, it automatically defaults to edit mode. Yes, it does. So as soon as you click on the schedule, it automatically puts it in edit mode. But if you click out of it, I believe it goes out of edit mode. Yes, now I'm out of edit mode and I have to go back into edit mode to edit these values. And remember that you can make multiple changes on these assumptions before you save, and you don't need to recalculate until you're ready to go to your employees or financials to see the changes. So if I were to change these PERS rates and just save it without recalculating the scenario or the employees, you would not see these changes take effect on the employees tab or the financials tab. Because recalculating takes, can take a minute, minute and a half, and you might want to make many changes before you recalculate, just to try to save a little time. And it goes, and obviously we have two other schedules here we'll look at, but any questions about the schedules? So if I go back to this PERS calculation, what we're saying is use a data schedule for this calculation.
Tim, I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
So back to the data schedule, Scott was saying that the value keep IV factors updated should default to off.
Yes.
So if it's checked on my New Year scenario, do I need to go in and uncheck that on all my schedules?
I'm going to do that for you. I'm going to uncheck that on everybody's
okay.
scenarios.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a new, I know we just added it last year, and I'm thinking we added it for you, Rhonda, because for some reason I'm thinking
I don't remember what the.
I thought yeah, okay. I could be wrong. But anyway, there was somebody that their values were changing in Visions and they wanted to bring them in automatically. I guess what I didn't know is that it copied it directly into the model though. So that's something to be aware of. It should default to unchecked.
Oh, Tim, you say that. Actually, let me check on that. Hover over that tooltip again. I want to see the property name. Hold on.
It says the model factors will be updated.
No, it is update on reload.
Notice you have inflation factors here. If you know everything is just increasing by 1%, you could just increase it here with an inflation factor. Almost all of the calculations have inflation factors. So you could actually increase it using the inflation factors here if you didn't want to manually go in and calculate each row. There's not that many, so it wouldn't be hard, but either way, it would work. So let's go back to this PERS contribution. So we're saying use a data schedule. This is just telling ESP where to load the values into the blue columns.
Tim.
Yep.
It only keeps the blue columns. It does not change the model.
Okay.
So
That's
it
what I
is
thought.
safe. It is safe to have that defaulted to on.
Right.
And I'll change the tooltip on there to indicate that.
Okay. So if this is checked, so now it probably should be checked, or it doesn't hurt to be checked, because if your rates change in visions, when you reload, and it's not the daily, right? It's when you manually reload.
Reload the employees, yeah.
When you reload the employees, right, it will update these rates, but it will not copy them into the model, which makes sense to me.
Right.
You know, we're very hesitant when we copy anything over your model. Any questions, guys, about this? It's super important to understand these calculations. So, okay, so we'll continue here with PERS. So it's using the data schedule. This is the loading information that we use to go in to look into your ERP to find those values and bring them in. This is where we get to the model factors. So if you're using a data schedule, these are the two main ones right here. I didn't mean to do that, sorry. The factor A and factor B, these are like a chain multiplications. So since you're using a data schedule, you don't want to, anytime you hear the word factor, that's going to be your multiplication value. But since we're using a data schedule to calculate the PERS, we don't want to calculate by a different value. If I put a 5 in here, it would then multiply whatever is being calculated from the schedule value times 5. So you want to leave these at 1. Normally, you want to leave these at 1 when you're using a data schedule. For example, let me just show you Social Security real quick. This is an easy one. This does not use a schedule, obviously, and the only thing that you would see in here is model factor A 0.0765, then times 1. We did have a case one time where they needed to calculate by 2 different values, so that's why we have an A and a B. Normally, your B is going to be 1, and your A will be whatever value. I believe workers' comp. No, that uses a schedule. Unemployment.
No, substitute calculations are handy to use the 2 factors. Like for classified, if you want to calculate 10 days at $245 a day times your classified FTE, you could create a calculation for that. And then it's handy to have the number of days and then the daily factor as you factor A and factor B, instead of having to multiply them out. It just is for documentation and understanding of the how the calculation is working. I think if you open scenario calculations, that's the spread.
Right. You want to describe how that's set up?
So in this example, and this is, let's see, Mary, this is, I mentioned we often give our features user names. So this is our Mary Carnegie feature that if you have a PERS, like a PERS bond, like let's say it's 1.2 million, you can see the factor A. If you want to spread that 1.2 million across all of your salary accounts, you can set that up as a spread account. And what it will do is it will calculate all of your salaries and divide it by 12 million and come up with a factor and scroll all the way to the bottom, Tim. It'll tell you what that factor is. It hasn't been calculated in the new scenario. So it'll actually tell you the calculated factor. And then because it is such a large amount and it's spread out across so many employees, there is often a rounding error. It will actually then apply a rounding, it'll subtract the total from the 12 million and put the rounding error in the highest object that in 213. Is that where? Yeah, in 213, it'll find the account code with the highest dollar amount and add the rounding factor to it, so that the net result will be the full 1.2 million. But it's an easy way, instead of having to constantly update your blended rates for PERS pickup, or actually that's PERS. It shouldn't be PERS pickup. It should be PERS bond.
PERS bond, right?
Pickup is usually 0.6 or 6%.
Well, there's the PERS pickup up here.
At 12.
I'm not sure where this came from.
Right, it should be PERS bond, because we know the principal and interest payment that it's gonna take, so this is an amazing feature. The only thing is, the problem would be, a tiny problem, is that sometimes in our grants, because you'll see there's a general fund amount, but our grants, we usually often will inflate them. And so sometimes you just have to be careful that you're charging enough to the general fund.
Right. And we can limit it to general fund by the account code also. So
right. And you can spread it to just the general fund employees too.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So I have a question on that. How is it spread across your functions?
Well, what it does, Rhonda, is it just takes every place there is a salary amount and creates a PERS pickup times the blended factor. So it takes well, let's see, it'll be the total salary. Oh gosh, let me think about this.
And when you say the average factor, it's the average percent, right? Like maybe it's pulling 22.5% or something.
Well, it's actually, I carry it out to about 10 decimals because it needs to be very large. Excuse me, it doesn't need to be large. It needs to be a lot of decimals because we're going to apply it as a factor to all the salary dollars. So it's going to sum, go back up to the top 10, it's going to sum all the salary roll-up accounts. So it's going to sum all of the salaries, the 0, 1s, and multiply it by that factor. And I understand the question, Rhonda.
Yeah, I'm wondering how it shows up on the financials. So Mary, I'm guessing is the one.
Well, you can go over to the financials, Tim, and you can see it over there.
Is the 1.2 million your full PERS bond payment for the year?
Yes.
And so instead of putting like a factor on there yourself, you're having it spread across functions.
Correct. And we put the amount in rather than a percentage. That way, each time you change the salary calculations in any area, you don't have to go back in. It'll automatically just spread that 1.2 million again.
Yeah, I like that.
It's wonderful. It saves a lot of time and frustration when you're trying to balance the revenue and expenditures, because every time you touch something, it changes it. So you could back into it with a dollar amount rather than a percentage. That makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, you can see it here. If you were to open up the
I see that I see the object. I'm just wondering how it goes across functions.
you have to look at it. Tim, open up a scope, like pick 031 at ideal scope, center 031.
Limited to just object 213?
No, show everything. Just like and general fund, just to limit it, and take the fund balance and revenue out. There you go. it probably, Tim, have you recalculated since you created the new year? It should have recalculated it, but it didn't put the blended rate in or the average rate in.
Right.
So if you were to so here it is right here. So you can see it's spread for this particular group. See, it summed all of these, but I'm not pointing, I'm sorry.
You can use the annotate.
Yeah, annotate.
So it took all the 1131s and applied the factor to it
Yeah,
for
it
the
took
sum of 1131.
right. So it took all of those and applied whatever that blended rate was to come up with, I don't know, that wasn't it.
The one above that,
Yeah.
2516.
Wow, that's a really nice feature.
Yeah. Yeah, it works really well in the fact that it will calculate, it'll adjust for any rounding errors. So I mean, right now it said 1.2 million and $7. It just hasn't been fully calculated on the financial grid. So, but yeah, it works pretty well. So, okay.
All right. So back to, we're still on this first calculation, and I'm talking about it a lot because most of these will follow pretty much the same path. So we get down to the model calculation chain. If you're using a schedule, just leave these at 1. If you're like Social Security, you're not using a schedule, your factor for your infinite visions will be 0.765 and then 1. And then your factor for the model will be 0.0765 times 1. And then there's something else for Social Security I'll talk about in just a second. And then everything else stays the same. And then this is always the important part. It's all important, but this is the result. This is where the values, after they're calculated, where they get shoved at in the financials, the result mask. Everything will get sent to 0211. This clear totals is important because the way ESP works is it goes from the top down. If you had another calculation going to 0211 and it came further down in the list, you would not want clear totals checked. The way this works is, like we talked about yesterday, it clears everything and then rebuilds it. So anything going to 0211 in the calculation chain, the first calculation you want to clear, and then anything else going to 0211, any other calculation you don't want to clear, because if you cleared, it would clear the previous calculation. But most people don't have that many things going to different, to the same object. But just be careful if you do, because you might only be getting the results from one calculation if you clear them the second time. And then down at the calculation details, you can just kind of see a summary of what is being calculated by this one calculation. So PERS is costing about 3.9 million from this one calculation alone. The PERS pickup. Now the thing about this one is, I'll go back to the top, is that this one is using a qualifier, which means the first thing we're doing, actually it's not set right. This is something, this should,
employee status.
PERS status, right? Yeah. PERS status, right? PERS.
Yep.
Right. So these are things to check on your new year. For some reason it wasn't set. And it might not have been set in the previous scenario that I created this from. That might be why. So this is saying, look at people's PERS status. And if they're not a working retiree, then calculate. Use this calculation. So basically this is saying this calculation applies to everybody except working retirees, if their PERS status is a working retiree. And it is not using a data schedule. And you can see here for the factor A, it's just multiplying their salary times 0.06. And it's putting the result in 0212. And if you look over here on the left, when there is a qualifier, it will show up in the descriptor here, as well as the name and the result mask. So you can quickly see the result of where these are being sent. The calculations are being sent. Any questions so far? Please ask. I know there's a lot of options here, but I would say 95% of the time, you're really only worried about just on a new year, once your scenarios are created, changing the factors and making sure the schedules are right. Social Security, pretty simple. Just 0.0765 for the factors. The only thing that we've found with Social Security is there's a cap, and I don't know what it is for 2023 or even 22, but this will stop. This will calculate Social Security up to 142,800. Anything over 142,800, it will not calculate because there is a federal guidelines about not calculating Social Security over a certain amount. 0.0765 for the factor, and then the results going into 220. Workers' comp uses a schedule. If you want to, you can either go down and click on the schedule here, or if you click on the schedule here, it will actually open up while you're in the properties of the calculation. But you don't have all of the other little options that you can check, like the default value. But this is just a quick way to look at the values that are being used. You can even edit from here. But if you wanted to check those other options or the default value, you have to actually go down to the actual schedule and click. Notice you'll get all of these options up above as well. So you actually have to go and click on the schedule to see the default value. So here is, this is being, since this is checked, calculate average factor. ESP is calculating the average workers' comp and applying it to the non-FTE accounts or anybody or any fundings that don't have a workers' comp code. They all should, but if they don't, it will use the default factor that ESP is calculating. And I believe we showed that factor here, the average factor. So if you want to see what is being calculated, you can come to the calculation, scroll down, and we put it here. We probably should put it on the schedule too, so you can see it there. But if you want to see it, it's right here. That's what ESP is calculating. Basically, it's just calculating the average percent that's being used based on the real funding. And again, because it's using a schedule, you want to leave your factors at 1. If you needed to multiply them for some reason, again, you could just change your factors here. That's why we call it a calculation chain. We try to make these, we don't have a lot of room. We try to make these descriptors, make sense. But there's not a lot of room to write too much. That's why, again, you have the tooltips. If you see that little symbol there, and you have a question about what something is, it pops up and we try to give you at least a little bit of information about what a property does. Unemployment, it doesn't use a schedule, just a 0.0045 going to 232. You can see here the average factor is the same as what's included up here, which it should be, because we're not using a schedule or any kind of blended rate or anything. Okay, any questions about calculations? Oh, okay, so let's talk about if you want to add a new calculation like PFMLI, the way to do it is you select, well, there's a few different ways. You can just click any calculation in here and then click the green plus, or you can right click and say add calculation. And the first thing it's going to ask you is what is the result? Where's the result going? Does anybody know what the PFMLI object is?
It's different. Each district creates.
Oh, okay. Or I'm just going to pick one, 0245 for right now. It's probably not right, but so that's the first thing it's going to ask you is where is this calculation going to be rolled up to on the financials? And notice that it's purple over here. We haven't saved it yet, but now we can go through, start at the top. And the label is the label that you'll see over here on the left. So put whatever you want, PFMLI. And the column heading, this is the, when you add the column on the employees tab, if you ever add the column, this will be just the, you might want it to be short. You can use a long label, but for column headings, you might want to keep them short so that your screen doesn't get too wide. But it can be called PFMLI too. Paid family medical leave. What's the I stand for? I don't know.
Insurance.
Insurance, right? Okay. Employee fixed costs. Employee. What's that listed twice? I need to check that. It is a fixed cost. It's active. If you create this and then you realize you don't want it, you can just uncheck active. You don't have to delete it, and it will just take. It will leave it there, but it will take the calculation out. As far as the source amount, generally you're going to want to accept this. It's going to. So this is going to be applied to all of the salary. This is including FTE salary and the lump sum salaries on the financials. It says sum the total wages. That's what it's going to be applied to. The calculation will be applied to all of the total wages. And that is a column that's on your employees. We'll look at that in just a minute. I don't know if there's a qualifier for this. I don't think so. There is no data schedule for this. We're not loading it from Visions. And it uses the 0.0045 because that is where, remember, I right clicked on unemployment and selected add calculation. So it kind of used that as a template to build this calculation. So then you would, that's where the 0.0045 is coming from. But if you have a different rate, just go in and change it. I think 0.001, I guess, I'm not sure what it is. Don't worry about spreading. This isn't a spread. You want to make sure that this is if you want it calculated on your blue columns, and then this is the factor, the model factor for the actual model, the green columns. So actually, you might have 0 for your infinite visions if they're not being calculated this year. And then here is the result mask that I picked when I created. And this is, again, this is just a copy from the unemployment. This isn't true yet until I save and recalculate. So I've created it, and all I've done is just made sure my result mask is right, my factors are right, and that's really all there is, and the result mask is right. That's really all there is to this fairly simple calculation. And then notice, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to ask you. So on this one, so it starts mid-year. So is there any way to put that into here? Because from what I understand, it starts in January of 2023.
Right.
You could, yeah, this has come up a couple times already. You could put a factor in, since January it's like 2/3, you could put in a 0.6 factor on the PFMLI where, let me see, Tim's screen's kind of small. So he hasn't gotten down to the factors yet. So
yeah, I put in, I don't know, I just put in
oh,
0.005.
so you could use the second factor to put in like a 0.6 to indicate you only want a budget for 0.6 of the year. But
yeah, because there is no dates available to when to apply these.
So you just have to it's always an annualized type of number. So you could just budget, you know, a fraction or a portion of the year, depending on how many work days or how many days you're actually going to start to incur the cost. Does that make sense, Sean?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. So this would calculate the value and then only apply 60% of it. So you have to figure out how many work days, you know, the ratio of what you want to apply, because we don't have a way of adding, just saying from this date to this date. It'd be a nice feature, but okay. So we haven't talked about saving. Most of you guys know, but remember, once you start editing, your save button goes active. Now, again, if I don't save, and when on the save, if I don't recalculate, I will not see this on the employees or the financials, but I just want to demonstrate that. So I'm going to go ahead and save. And the note would be adding PFMLI, and you're given the options to recalculate the scenario and recalculate the employees here. I want to do that because if I didn't want to go to the employees right now or the financials and check that it's working, I wouldn't need to recalculate yet. I just want to save this. But since I do want to double check it, which we recommend anytime you create or change values here on the assumptions, before you get too far along, go and check that the employees and the financials are giving you the values you kind of expect to see. So that, you know, maybe I accidentally should have made that 0.06, or, you know, in case something is incorrect before you get too far along. And we'll see that real quick. Oh, I got an error. Something I must have done wrong. Has anybody else tried that yet?
What did you, oh, you added the
Oh.
PFMLI?
Right, it went away. Let me try it again real quick. Maybe it was the object that I selected.
That should have validated.
Tim, while you're putting that
ahead.
in, I have a
Mhm.
question about the
Yep.
employee qualifier.
Mm-hmm.
So the employee qualifier is basically saying, don't pull this in?
Well, it depends on what you select for. You got to understand what. Let me save this real quick, Rhonda. I think that's all I care about. For that example that I used, the left and right bracket.
Yeah.
That means as long as they are not that calculated on them. I'm not doing something right. Fine.
What's it? Are you getting an error?
Yeah.
Hold on, let me.
So Rhonda, let's see, what were we looking at? What was that? Okay.
Like
so
on first pickup, that
this
would be a good example.
Yeah, this symbol means not equal to, right? If you look, let me go there. Yeah, if you don't know what these symbols mean, I guess it can be a little confusing.
Right, and I looked at the tool on it.
Does
So
it
it
not?
says.
Okay, yeah. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Right, so this is saying They qualify if their PERS status does not equal
Okay.
working retiree.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, I don't want to head down a rabbit hole. However, there is another mechanism. If you have employee statuses that identify your PERS or your working retirees, there is a mechanism using the PERS, the employee status table, where you can determine by employee status whether the taxes, employee costs, and retirement are calculated based on whatever employee status they're in. So if you had an employee status called working retiree, we could exclude the PERS calculations based on that status. If they were, what's another example? If they were on a paid leave where the district is paying their benefits but not their salary, you could have it calculate the benefits. So there is another mechanism where we can set up by your employee status codes from Visions, an additional mapping for the different types of employee costs. And I know that Park Rose uses that. And if anybody
So
wants,
that's mapping that you do, or we set in the assumptions?
actually go to the tools, and then go to the table editor, administration, table editor. There you go. And click the employee status and then expand that. So based on this, you can say, see, it says include salary, include supplemental, include benefits, include fixed costs, include taxes. And what's the other one? Include retirement. Okay. So then, and it just depends on how you're using your employee status. Oh, see, there is in this case, they do have a retiree in there. So you could actually go in and uncheck the retirement options from this table, save it, and then go back to the, and just remember there's a fixed cost, taxes, and retirement and benefits. Okay, and then close this, Tim. You don't have
You
to
want me to
save
uncheck
it.
that?
No,
Oh,
we'll
okay.
just show the concept here. Then if you look at the top of the calculation, see it's called retirement. Drop that list down. You can classify your costs as fixed cost, retirement, or taxes, which correspond to those check boxes on your employee status. Pretty cool, huh?
So if you say this is a retirement, anything that's checked for include retirement, if you uncheck that one, then you wouldn't need to set the qualifier.
Correct.
This is like a qualifier.
Yes, it's a more granular qualifier, but this is tied. Every employee has an employee status. You just have to make sure that everything is lined up and that the employee statuses are correct. So, and if in the districts, this list, the employee status list, is implemented differently at every school district. So it just depends on how you're using that list. Does that make sense, Rhonda?
Yeah, it does make sense. Mike, I'm wondering though, so that sets it at the high level. So then if you go back into your assumptions, because you do want retirement to be on your UAL piece, but not on your PERS pickup. So is it going to remove it from, or do you, when you set it on the 211 object?
It's gonna follow, and again, I can't point, let me go to annotate. It's gonna follow whatever you set up the calculation type to be.
Right, so then this would not calculate on those retirees.
But if PERS UAL is more of an employment tax, or what are the options in there again, Tim?
Fixed costs, retirement, or taxes.
Yeah, you could classify UAL as a fixed cost if UAL gets applied to all employees.
Yeah.
Then you would, yeah. So again, there's
that would then follow the one that says taxes, right?
no
taxes.
include.
I mean fixed costs.
Fixed costs, right?
Yeah.
Fixed
Okay,
costs would
so
be
you do
like
have to get granular on the calculations piece at each object
Correct.
level. Okay,
correct.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, taxes or statutory taxes, FICA, Social Security, federal income tax. Fixed costs would be like unemployment, workers' comp, UAL. You know, that's a butt in the seat type of, you know, are they showing up for work? We have to pay workers' comp. We have to pay unemployment, whatever you define as fixed costs. And so, and those may not necessarily, I don't think I have a way. Oh gosh. Well, yeah, I do have a way to say I don't want to apply this to my non-roll-up costs on the, that's another option on the each calculation. You can say don't apply it to my non-employee roll-ups. So yeah, it is, you can get very granular it does seem busy, but once you get it set up, it does work rather well.
So just to show everyone, to get to that table editor, you go to Tools, Administration, Table Crosswalk Editor. And this is just saying you got to be careful because these are your tables, all of your lookup tables, and be careful what you're changing in here.
Some of them are application specific. Some of
Right.
them are tied directly to, yeah, you'd have to, if you refresh, it'll repaint that table.
I had multiple ones open. Just trying to load the position table. Was anybody else able to add the PFMLI? We have to figure out what I'm doing that's causing
Let me see what it
problem.
says. Assumption action field is employee fixed cost value true.
I did notice there's two there, Scott. That might be
I was able to add it.
okay.
Sean, do you have two employee fixed cost labels in that property grid?
Yes.
Right here.
You do, okay. Create it again and see if, I just want to see, I can actually see from the assumptions, don't waste their time. I'll track that down.
Okay.
With this demo and test data, it sometimes gets a little bit wonky because we do so many manipulations on it.
Right. And unfortunately, I don't keep my demo. I need to keep my demo database up to date that often. I should make sure I do that. I'm going to try it again one more time because I just want to show you guys something. If Sean was able to do it, I should be able to do it.
You're not using the same app version that he is. I don't think I
right.
changed anything, but
okay, well, let's just pretend then. Cancel that. Abandon that.
see, look at it. It says it's not an employee fixed cost.
No, I'm sorry. When I just hit refresh, it went away.
Right.
But it could be that is confusing it.
Right. So let's pretend that I just added, we will look at that immediately after this, that I just added unemployment. All right, let's say that's the one that I just added. You'll now be able to go to your employees tab and a couple of things. You'll be able to, and this is after saving and recalculating the scenario and the employees. So see this fixed cost total column, and it has a little yellow tooltip symbol. If you put your mouse, click in there and put your mouse cursor over there, you will see all of those fixed cost calculations, you will see them show up and what is being calculated. This is a total of, this is a sum of each individual calculation, but you'll be able to see, okay, unemployment is calculating $227. And here's the factor, that 0.0045 times the total wages, this 50,411. So it's taking 0.0045, multiplying it times 50,411 to get the unemployment. If you want to see each individual column, you can. We've added that, I believe, this year or last year. If you right click to bring up your columns, go to the model, because that's what we're looking at, right, is the model. And you notice there is a fixed cost submenu up at the top. And then here's all of those fixed costs. I'm going to click on unemployment. So this would be how, after you add or change a calculation, come over here before you get too much further along and just double check that these values are what you expect to see. And if you keep your scope limited, maybe to just a center or just a function, when you're adding columns and refreshing, it will go a little faster. I really should do that. I'm showing all of my fundings, almost 2,000. That's why it takes a little long. But anyway, so here is the unemployment calculation. And so if we take 50,411 times 0.0045, $226.85, which we round to 227. Right? And then this gets rolled up. You can double check that this then gets rolled over. So I got 321,866 for the total on the employees tab. That should be what we see. Well, if I had my, let me change my scope real quick. Clear everything. I'm going to put the object at the top. Sum everything, because all I care about is seeing the objects broken out right now. I haven't recalculated, so it might be off a little bit, but then I can see unemployment here, 330, 348. Is that what we saw on the employees? 320. Well, I haven't recalculated, so that could be why. But what you see on the, also don't forget, I know why. Remember, this is just the FTE salaries, where if you look at it on the financials, you're also including these other salaries. I haven't recalculated, so anytime, I mentioned this yesterday, anytime you're double checking your values like this, make sure you have a green flag, which means you have recalculated the scenario and all these values are up to date. All right. So any questions about the calculations? Really important to understand how they're built and where they're coming from. Hopefully all you have to do is maybe add the PFMLI in there and go in and just change the factors. If they've changed, go to your PERS, update your PERS here. Maybe change, don't forget to change your default factor if you're manually entering a default factor. Make sure you update that. But that's really hopefully all you'll have to do for the calculations. You know, we set all this up when we bring you on as a new client. You know, we have to spend a lot of time getting everything set up right. But generally, then the next year, it's a lot easier. You're just wiggling a few numbers. So then the next section here, I know we've only got about 15 minutes left. We'll pick this back up tomorrow. The object groups. So we talked about what the salary accounts are. What all this is doing is creating a group of objects that you're going to do something with. And the reason why everybody has the salary accounts is because that's what's used in these calculations up here, because you're telling it, notice I clicked on Social Security. We're saying apply this calculation to the salary accounts. And that is referring to these salary accounts over here. So if you have a new object that is a salary account, you will need to add it in here. And to do that, well, you click on the top level, and this uses a mask. This is saying add anything to this group that is a 01 asterisk. So if it comes in from Visions or Business Plus with the 01, it will automatically be added in here. And then these are the roll-up accounts. These generally don't change too often, or they haven't changed. And these are the ones that get rolled. Notice the icon is the same that you see on the Financials tab, the colorized icon. These get rolled up from the Employees tab into the Financials tab. And it is, it generally does not change. I haven't seen it change very much. Then the next one, this you might or might not have, is utilities. We do see a lot of districts. They create this group. I'm trying to see what it must. Okay, so it was manually created. If you right click, you manually can pick which objects you want to appear here. And the reason why, like I said, you create a group when you want to do something to it. These are generally have an inflation group or an inflation factor applied to it. Electricity, fuel, water, sewage, and garbage. And I feel like I'm missing my section here that shows
the percentage
and the source column.
utilities. It's flagged
Inflation group.
it's flagged as an inflation group. Group type, click, change the group type.
Oh, okay. Inflation.
Yep.
There we go.
Yeah.
Again, things to check that should be set as an inflation group type, which we're telling ESP that we want to take this group and apply an inflation factor to it. So once you add that, change that to inflation, you have this inflation section down here. And what this is saying is take the source column, Infinite Vision's working, and it's set to 0%. So this is what you would want to change and apply a 3% inflation factor to it. And then you can include or exclude accounts if you want to. And what that would do is it would take whatever is in the working, add 3% and stick that into your model on the Financials tab. Like I said, we had a district the other day. She added every single object 300 higher than 300 in this list and just did one inflation factor on every object. So you can use it however you wish to use it.
And the inflation factor can be negative, so you could do a reduction too.
Right. Almost for any of these, we talked about inflation, you can do negative as well. Because all of these usually have an inflation factor. You can do negatives. Any questions about the object groups or inflation? Utilities?
So Tim, I've had some issues with the inflation factor when it's split funded. Is that still an issue?
Are you talking about employees or?
No, I'm like if I'm doing utilities.
And it's split funded?
Mm-hmm.
Not sure the context of utilities and split funding. Can you,
Because we're doing it at the building level.
right, but it's based solely on the object. So if it's split between buildings, if it's, in this case, if it's 325, whatever whatever, in this example, we're using the last year's working, and we're adding 3% to it. I don't know, was this a known issue that we've talked about?
I think I talked to you about it last year. I don't know. I'd have to pull it up and see what it was. So I can just talk to you about that.
Yeah, I'm
individually.
curious because it is a pretty simple, it's a simple calculation. If it's in this group, it's going to add 3% to it. Now, we did change the grid calculations a little bit where there is a separate inflation amount column in the roll-up column, so where you can actually see what the actual inflation amount is. So when you get to that, Rhonda, just give us a jingle, and if it doesn't make sense to you, let's take a look at it.
Okay, sounds good.
But one thing to be aware about is if in your working you have a $0 amount, you're going to have a zero inflation amount. So that's something to be aware of. So here are those 325, 326. Notice that it has the same icon. And what we told it to do was take the working, bring it into the model, add 3% for your final amount.
Tim, show the inflation roll-up account.
If you right click, there's a lot of hidden columns here. If you go to model, roll up, inflation.
So if you wanted to apply a different inflation rate to fuel than to water and sewage, you would have to separate them into more groups.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or, well, you could manually do it, but then you would be overriding the calculation.
And you'd have to hit the wherever that object is being used throughout the budget. So
Yeah, or I would not include fuel in this list, and then on the financials you can just add. You
so
would just be able to put 3% in.
so go over to the assumptions tab. So if you were, Mary, if we were to say, and this is it was kind of a leading question, and it's dangerous to do that with me. So if we had this set up as an inflation group, and we said we didn't have a factor, and we said individual, we had a setting, and then if you clicked on this, click on the electricity, Tim. I keep losing this. So all it says is we could extend the functionality and actually put an inflation factor here, so you could do individual ones, but that's not a feature. But would not be hard to implement. So
This is Mary. Scott, I don't know if we would ever do, as large as we are, we probably wouldn't ever do across the board inflation factor, the same factor. So, we can make our own groups. That's not a big,
Right.
It sounds like it's pretty easy, but
Right.
That would be something maybe if you get bored someday.
right, yeah, really. I'll let you know. If I get bored, Mary, I'm going to retire. I'm going to retire just like you did.
Mary, I've been with Scott for about 7 years. I've never seen him bored once, so I don't know if that'll ever happen.
Tim, click up on the group option. There are some other options there. You can input masks in there of what to include and what to exclude also, and limit it to just the general fund.
Well, I got a question about that, Scott. If you want to exclude, why not just take it out of here? Oh, you mean a full account?
Maybe you want to take it out of a certain function.
Right, yep. Also, you have these other options here as far as the source column. I believe working will probably be what you use, but you also could choose your Infinite Visions adopted and some other columns you probably would not want to use. But this is just saying the source value to add the 3% to. Generally, it's going to be your working or maybe your adopted. But you could even take your current amount column in your model and apply 3% again to it.
Now, Tim,
which wouldn't make sense.
Well, then, and I've slept since we did this. We reworked this last year. That because if you select your working, if your model amount, every time you recalculate, it's going to escalate.
Right.
But I think that's the reason why it is now its own column. So it will revert back to the base, to the current amount, and apply an inflation factor to it. So I'd have to check the logic, but I think we had to prevent it from cascading every time you recalc, so you could select the model amount. But we'll need to test that.
I'll test that. Yeah, because every time you recalculate, this is going to go up by 3%.
Exactly.
Right.
That wouldn't be good.
No. Again, we always suggest when you're making these calculations, you then go to the grid and make sure that these values are what you expect to see. You could even grab the working, move it to the left of the amount. You can right click, go to calculated and say delta value percent. This is just tell me the name of the column heading and 3%. So this went up by 3%. So a good way to check.
You could also divide the inflation column by the fixed amount or by the total amount, and it should show you the same thing. So that's something I don't know if we did add quotient and product and sum to the calculated columns a year or so ago. And you can now do calculated columns that include calculated columns. So you're not quite building Excel formulas, but you can do compound calculated columns now.
So I have that group present, but the blue header bar has a line through it. What does that mean?
Blue header bar. That means it's inactive, probably. You meant to check this box right there.
Uncheck it, Tim. What does it do?
Yep, that's what it is.
Yeah. And if you take this away, it will reset it back to the, that's right. If you take this away, it will reset it back. It will remove the inflation. So if you do inactivate this, you want to keep it active at all times, because if you unactivate it, it will remove the 3% and it will stay back at the whatever the working values were.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was causing it to inactivate. Okay, so tomorrow we'll pick up at benefit plans and pay components. That's, you know, pay components are always fun. They get a little bit complicated. Any questions, guys? Or anything you want us to talk about tomorrow? Because Friday we're going to switch over to Scott's going to take back over and talk about the web app and responsibility centers.
Yeah. In my spare time. No.
When you get bored.
Yeah.
So any questions about the object groups or the calculations? I know the assumptions tab is quite confusing and there's a lot of options, but understanding how they work is pretty important to understanding where the values are coming from on the employees tab and the financials tab. And again, hopefully you're just wiggling a few numbers and not having to rebuild a lot of things.
And again, once they're set up, you're only having to manage exceptions.
Right. Okay, feel free to fire us an email if you come across any problems or questions, and we will address those tomorrow or email you back. And if there's nothing else, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you either this afternoon. You're welcome to come back. We're going to go over the same things this afternoon. You're welcome to come back, or we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. I wonder what's going on with that. Where was it? The double employee fixed cost here.
Yeah, I fixed it. I looked back in the history of the files and it somehow got added. I must have inadvertently added it, but that could be what's throwing that off. So I can do another beta build and you can test it. I'm going to get a database updater built also. We have time. You could apply the updater and try and recreate your new year and see if it works better. And I'm going to do it on Park Rose, and I'm going to do it on a couple other districts, maybe Genie, and just to test to make sure things go well.
Okay.
I'm creating I'm altering the copy database function to where it has a backup only. So it'll do the backup, but not actually restore. Because I want to be able to do a backup just by calling a stored procedure. I'm thinking about the fix-ups I have to do for the employee ID stuff at LBL. I want to be able to, in a script, back it up. So and I don't know that it's a separate stored procedure modified from the copy. I don't know if I'll ever expose it. I could actually expose it and put the options on if it's us, so we can back up a database right from the UI.
Right.
So anyway, all right. So I'm going to do an updater and I'll do another app build.
Okay. I think because you started it, it's recording on your computer.
Oh.
Because I don't have the option to